Okay. Hello, everybody. We're so excited to have you joining us for our September You Lead webinar. We love this time with you. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been with us on here multiple times, we're just glad you could join us today. We're praying for a lot of our friends in the path of the hurricane and the consequential winds and tornadoes. So I know a lot of our friends in Mississippi and Louisiana and Arkansas and on up. We're praying for you all today and thinking of you. And we're just so excited that you can join us today. So we would love if you would jump on the chat, tell us your name and where you're from so we can see who's joining us. We actually have over 500 women signed up to join us on the webinar today. So this is going to be a good full time together. Um, as some of you may know, each time we do a webinar, we give away a free resource. Um, and so you can sign up for that to be in that the free resources and the free giveaway that we do each month. If you go to lifeway.com/ministry news to sign up for that, our giveaway for this September webinar is actually 2 event tickets to a U Lead in 2025. So we just launched, if you saw the pre-roll at all, you saw where we are going to a lot of cities with U Lead this year. And we're so excited about that and just getting to do more leadership training and encouraging you in your place of ministry. And so if you want to sign up for that e-newsletter, get your name in the hat for the 2 tickets for one of those and get to go to one of those for free. That would be great. The other thing we want to make sure you knew about that we had a little bit in the pre-roll is a new event that's coming out in 2025, which is actually with Jen Wilkin in the Word. And so just check out all of our events for next year. It's going to be full year in 2025. Uh, the one other thing I wanted to tell you is with our You Lead webinars, we always have the option if you want to get a free ebook of Dr. Kelly King's Ministry to Women. You use promo code MIN, MIN, to women free at when you go online uh, at lifeway.com and look up that Ministry to Women book, and then you'll at the checkout you'll put in that code and get that for free, the free ebook. So I want to make sure you know about that. I've got lots of announcements today. One other thing I want to make sure you're aware of is that we have our next Lifeway Women Academy course that is releasing right now on how to grow in Christ likeness, and it's basically spiritual formation 101. Jen Wilkins teaching in that, Dr. Eunice Chung, Christy Allen, Stefana Dan Lang. It's 10 sessions long, just some really great in-depth teaching on spiritual formation that would be great for you as a leader or for maybe a group of women at your church. Um, and so we love having the offerings of Lifeway Women Academy. We are in full gear. I know I'm just talking on and on about all these announcements, but we are in full gear getting ready for our women's forum. That's our annual women's forum that's in November on November 7th and 8th. The theme this year is whole, which WHOLE, which is based on Mark 12:30. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and talking about being whole as a leader and as a woman in Christ. And so we hope that you can come to Forum. We're super excited about it. Just incredible time together for networking and learning together. And so we love it when we can actually meet a lot of you in person. It's so fun. That's one of my favorite things when somebody goes, I've seen you on the webinar. And I'm like, ah. So it's so fun and I love it. So I hope to see you there. It'll be a great time together. Um, Reminder, if you've never joined us before, anything that you, as we're talking today and you have questions, please feel free to put those in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, not in the chat, because we try to get all those questions kind of put together, and we'll come to those in about the last 10 to 15 minutes of our webinar and have our panelists answer those. So as we start today, and I'm going to share our panel, but first I want to give a big introduction. A lot of you may have known our Lifeway previous Lifeway Women's Specialist. We had Chris Adams for a number of years, who was just fantastic, and then retired a number of years ago now. And then we had Dr. Kelly King, which we just love Kelly so much, who was our specialist for 7 to 10 years. She is actually back in a local church in Oklahoma and teaching at Southeastern Seminary now. And so in all that shifting, we have our new women's specialist, Dr. Alicia Wong. Some of you may know her from Gateway Seminary, or you may have known her. She's previously with IMB and NAM and other seminaries, actually. And so, Alicia, I want to start off with you, just so everybody can put a name and a face together and know who you are. So if you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Greetings from Southern California. I think you can see the palm trees there a little bit, but we are dealing with a lot of fires to the right, left, and in front of us. I mean, there's just a lot going on here. But I am so excited about this new season, for me at least, and going into women's ministry. But I have had the opportunities to serve at Southeastern and Southwestern, and I've led a number of U leads all across the country as well, having served in other seminaries across the country. But I've been so blessed with what Chris and what Kelly have done. I know I'm walking to big shoes and would really covet your prayers, and would love to meet you all and be able to serve you in this way. I'm learning. I'm trying to figure out what God wants in this next season. And so I welcome any advice and just even your thoughts about women's ministry. So I'm really looking forward to meeting you all at the forum or at U Leads and other places as well. And so thank you again for just even inviting me on this webinar. I look forward to doing them with you guys in the future. Sorry, you all. I have to remember that I'm going back to the South, and you guys does not sound as comforting as you all. So y'all. So excited. Thank you again, Michelle, for letting me just say hello to all the ladies here.
Thank you, Alicia. So the great thing with these webinars, if you look in the chat, we have women. We've got Erica from Virginia. We've got Sarah from Tacoma, Washington. I love it to sit here and look through the chat and where everybody's from, because it is hard to sometimes travel or get together, and some of us will never meet this side of heaven. But I love it because we're each in our regions, in our zones, doing whatever the Lord has called us to do in this leadership journey and in our walk with Christ. There's one from Massachusetts. I love it. So anyway, it's just so fun to have you all on here. I'm going to introduce now our panel for today, which are all very experienced in the area of events. Oh my goodness. So I'm gonna start with you, Sherry, if you'll just give a quick introduction of who you are.
Sure, yes. My name is Sherry Edwards, and I live in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and I've been serving in women's ministry in a variety of capacities for the last 20 plus years. I have helped start and plan our statewide women's conference over a number of years. So that has been really a great experience for me. I also teach ministry to women class at Ouachita Baptist University here in our state. And I also help equip and train women's ministry leaders as part of our Arkansas Baptist Women Coalition to equip and deploy women to go back to their local church as they serve. So I love serving women. So I'm excited to be with y'all today.
Thanks, Sherry. Okay, Anne, give us a little bit about you.
Well, I love that you said we're experienced, because I'm pretty sure that means old. Is that right? Anyway, hi guys. My name is Ann Harrison, and I am from Texas. So Alicia, thank you for y'alling, because that's the love language that we speak in Texas. And I saw actually a lot of my friends on here, even some people that are local to me. So it's fun to see everybody. I am a mom of 3 boys and a beautiful daughter-in-law, which I'm telling you is why I love women's ministry, because the rest of my life is very masculine. And the Lord has given me opportunity to serve both in a local church, on a church staff, and then in parachurch ministry. And I get to serve with Lifeway as part of their event team, part of their simulcast team, and as a trainer. So it is just exciting to me to see what the Lord is doing in churches and communities all over. So we're excited to be here today.
Yay. Thank you, Anne. Okay. And Mary Margaret, I want you to introduce yourself. But first, y'all, Mary Margaret has a new Bible study for teen girls that just released. Do you have her out there? Yes. Yes.
There it is. Here she is.
Worthy.
So I know
Yes.
made worthy. So it releases October 1st. It's already on lifeway.com and Amazon. And it's just a 5-week study that if you have teen girls in your life, whether that's a daughter, granddaughter, if you serve in student ministry, or if maybe the Lord's just prompting you that way, just a way for you to walk them through what it looks like to be made worthy, and that Jesus is the only one that can do that for us. So I'm super excited that I finally got my copy last week. So I'm really thrilled, and thank y'all for letting me share about it.
Yay, so great, 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 great. So all of you have done a lot of events, and I think that probably there's a lot of women that are watching today that have also done tons of events at different points with their church or in some capacity. One thing I would love for you all to do, if you don't mind, are just any like creative ideas that you've had with events or that you've seen at a women's event that you've gone to. Um, if you've gone to, we were trying to think of what are some fun creative ideas. I've seen people do a women's event with the decades where they came in the decade that they kind of grew up in, dressed 70s or 80s or, whatever years, certain decorations or certain themes. Um, but if you'll just drop those in the chat, if something comes to mind that you think, oh, that was such a great idea, the way that I saw they decorated everything with umbrellas, or they, whatever it was, put those ideas in the chat so that you can all just grab some of those, all, something that really strikes a spark in you and write it down real quick or whatever. So feel free to do that as we're going throughout today. Maybe it might be an icebreaker or something like that, that just or just anything that kind of gets our creative juices flowing is kind of what we want. Because we want women to experience the fun and creative at events, right? But we also want to plan those meaningful events that they walk away and know that there was really a purpose behind it, that that there's some kind of takeaway that drew them, closer to God through that. Um, the thing that I have learned about events that I'll kick us off with this is, I do think events can be a real milestone or marker for a lot of women. It may be that the Lord has been churning and working in some way for months or years. And then you have that moment at that event where it all comes together, and God, that it just is on fire, whatever it is, whatever it's the next step in ministry for you, or it's, something that he has called you to do in some way. Um, Also, somebody who's maybe not been walking to the Lord, but it can be a really, um, a time of refreshing or a time of rejuvenation or a time of recommitment when they come to an event, when it's meaningful. And of course, because it's giving them this focused time on the Lord. And so just kind of keep that in mind as we're going about the day, and thinking through, how can meaningful events be that mile marker and be that milestone for the women that you're serving. So let's talk about what is a meaningful event. Okay. We don't want to be in a just event to event to event driven kind of ministry. So Sherry, I want to start with you. What are some of the things that when you want to say, what is a meaningful event? What do I want to see God do? How do you, as you're preparing and planning?
Right. I think this is such a great title for this webinar because I think the key word is meaningful.
Mhm.
And I think that, for a number of years, we were all on that treadmill of just planning ministry. We plan our Bible studies, we plan our events, we plan the things that make up our calendar year. If you're a women's ministry leader, you know what I'm talking about. And then we had this thing called the pandemic where everything went away, and that really gave us a chance, I feel like, to reevaluate and no matter your experience or how long you've been leading a women's ministry, if you're new, if you've been doing it a while, I think it's always a good idea to take a step back and say, why have we been doing this? And has it been serving the goal of seeing spiritual growth in our women? And so I think then we talk about meaningful events instead of focusing on event driven ministry and planning all the things. I think we need to take that step back and refocus on having ministry driven events. Like, what does God want to do in the hearts of our women? And so that begins with us asking, Lord, not what do the women want, but God, what do you want? Because we can hear from all kinds of women like, well, I would love to do this. I would love to do crafts. I would love to do games. I would love to do just a worship night, all the things. Like, we can plan all the things, but it has to start with seeking the Lord. What does he want to do in the hearts of our women? And remembering the context that we each serve in and the spiritual depth. And so I kind of wrote an article a couple of years ago for Lifeway Women on, I don't remember the title of it, but it was centered around what makes up a meaningful event. And so I think that, of course, I came up with 5 P's because, we have to have the 5 points. But first of all, it starts with prayer. And I think that we want to pray, we want to seek the Lord's direction, and then pray and ask the Lord, God, what do you want us to do? What do you want to do in the hearts of our women? Who do you want us to reach through this event? How can you be glorified through this event? And how can we point women to Jesus? And so we start with that. And then the Lord leads us to, what is the why behind your event? I was talking with a friend the last couple of months who is actually planning an event for our women's ministry at my church. And she's young in the role, and she just wanted to have some insight and input. And I said, well, let's think about, what do you want the women to walk away from as you're planning this event? And then, because we can have a spiritual goal in mind, and that helps us to put all the steps in place to see that happen, and then work into the practical, translate the spiritual into the practical, which is the process. So that's kind of like my starting point for events. Like, why are we doing this, and who do we want to reach?
That's good. That's good. And what would you share just on what is the purpose of an event? What would you add to that?
I think when we were talking about events, we do want to distinguish this between, this is not just our Bible studies that we do on a weekly basis. So I think when we're looking at event planning, we are looking at specific dates on a calendar. Now, it may be a reoccurring event. Maybe you do this quarterly, or you do this yearly, or you do this every Christmas. But when we're talking about events, this is something that, and we've talked about this, there's a spiritual marker attached to it. There is something that at the end of this event, the end of this day on this calendar, we are wanting something specific. And so I think that kind of helps us understand, are we talking about an event? Or are we talking about how we do Bible studies, or how we do weekly moms gatherings, or, weekly other things, or things that kind of just are more routine? And I think, like you said, our women are busy, right? We are all sitting on this call, and we're so glad you guys made time for us for this 1 hour, but we have a lot to fill our calendars with. So we don't want these events to simply fill a calendar. We want them to be intentional. Everything that Sherry said, I would echo for sure. We want this to be purposeful. We want women to have an encounter with the Lord. I think that's what events really can give us, these meaningful events.
That's good. That's so good. So Mary Margaret, so kind of just talking about the starting point, how does the mission and the vision of your church play into all your event planning? I know we've talked about
Yeah.
this before. Yeah.
And I think like I realized I forgot to like actually introduce myself, but to tell you a little bit about where I serve, I live in Orlando, Florida, and the mom of two boys who are 2.5 and 8 months and staying quiet out there, amazingly enough. And but I've served several churches in the area of women's ministry, both big and large, big and small, and worked at Lifeway for a long time planning events. And so I think the thing that I've learned, especially being in different contexts, is you've got to know your context, know your church. You know what fits the vision and the the goals of your church. Because I think so often we want to go, what would be fun and what would be exciting, and like those are great questions to ask along the way. But you've got to make sure that it fits within the design of the church that you're in, because sometimes that otherwise it'll feel like a round peg in a square hole. And so often we lose support of our other like ministerial staff. And like right now I'm the volunteer women's ministry director at my church. And and I want to make sure that what we're doing fits our church so that I've got the support of those around me to make it happen and to make it effective. And so, know your women, ask the Lord what he wants. And like we even did a survey of our women last year, just saying, what are you looking for as we're beginning women's ministry for the first time? What is this, what do you want to see happen? What are your greatest needs? And I think when you ask those questions and then you say, Lord, what do you want us to do with this? How do we move forward? That's when you begin to see effective, meaningful events happen, not just things that people that are going to be time wasters and things on the calendar.
That's good. That's really good. Okay. So I want us to do a quick little thing. I want y'all to all jump in on the chat. Okay. Because I want us to think about who are the women you're reaching in your ministry through your events and or Bible studies and other things you do. But let's really focus on events more and think about who you're not reaching. And so I would love to see for you to just type in the chat the group or groups that you feel like you're not reaching. Is it the college young adults? Is it single women? Is it moms? Is it, your more mature women, maybe 60 and up or so? Is it the lost women who do not know Jesus? So just put in like one answer. We would like to know, honestly, just like who are the more, it's like we're doing really good in this area, but we're struggling to get these to come to the events. This is so good. Very good. Um, uh, this is so great. Yeah. That just kind of gives us a little tally to see as we head forward in the webinar things. Empty nesters. That was a good way of putting that instead of, I said 60 and up or whatever. It could be whatever age. Okay, good. Okay. So we're sitting here looking at all that you're putting in the chat and these age groups it's a struggle. It's hard to get 18 to 98-year-olds all in one place, and it's going to be meaningful for everybody. But how do we get these different groups to come to an event? Sherry, do you want to maybe start out with that of how you have tried to really reach across generations?
Yeah, and I think that this kind of goes back to when we're planning an event, like who are we trying to reach, or what is there a target group, or of course most of our events we want to see all of our women there, but this goes also back to Mary Margaret's point about knowing our church, knowing our context. Some of our churches have a lot of what we see, what the women that I talk with across my state, every church is different. Some churches have a lot of the older generations and a few younger ones, and so the younger ones may not come. Some churches have a lot of younger families, and so the older women maybe don't feel as needed or necessary. And then we have churches that have a mix of ages, and so that really goes back to who is planning your events. Like I think, and I have a friend who does a great job of this. She's at a fairly good sized church here in my state. And this question came up at one of our local meetings. And one of the women said, because it's a question I hear a lot, how do you get the women to come? And I think, first of all, you have to realize who's missing. I think you have to look around and see yeah, we're reaching a good number of women, but who are we not seeing at our events? And I think we have to assess that. And what she has done is and I think a lot of a target group that I hear as well is, just busy moms. Like we have a lot of young moms who are just, their life is full, their life is hectic, and it's full of just the things. And so if they're going to make time to go to something or to come to something, it's got to be meaningful. So we have to think about, and I don't want to just include young moms. That's just an example of who is missing from some of our events. And so what she has done, she has pulled them in to being part of the planning of the event, to get their input, to pull them in to serve, to bring their friends. Because once you engage the people group or the target group that you are missing, you're gonna get their buy-in, and you're going to get them to come. You're going to get their friends to come, and so just that personal connection as well, I think, is important. And you can do that for any demographic of group that you're not seeing. But I think, first of all, we have to notice who is not at our events.
It's good. And you want to add anything to that? Just like as far as either building a team to help you with it, or I know not Jan made a great point. It's hard to have an event that will minister and reach such diverse groups, and that is true. And that's where I think if it is an event where you are definitely focused on God's word, it's for all ages. It's for all ages when you're focused on God's word and knowing God. And so, but just thinking through that, if you're going to do something that is purposeful and meaningful to help them to be in God's word, to walk with him. And that's really, you narrowed your focus down in a lot of ways. But like, Anne, what would you say as far as like building a team, or just learning to gather women to serve in their giftedness, maybe?
Well, I serve served on staff in a multi-generational church. So we had women in every single age, and large pockets of women in every single age. And I found that the best way for us to get the most diverse group of women coming was to make sure my leadership team looked just as diverse as the women I wanted to come to the event. So we had younger and we had older, we had college girls, and we had those that were maybe, we talk about a little bit more mature, but man, you need those women who have walked decades and decades with the Lord to come around. And what I saw even within these leadership groups and this event planning group that was so different in age and stage of life, just even in the planning, there was ministry that happened there within that leadership group. And that just became such a catalyst for how the event went. I think the other thing that we can look at is we all know the women in our church that have influence over other women. And so what we found to be really helpful is we would influence the influencers. So sometimes I would call specific women, kind of give them the vision of this event, and then say, hey, do you have 5 people that you could invite? Do you have 10 people? Do you have 50 people you could invite? And it was amazing when you get those women who really have a voice into other women to get on board and to know. I think part of it is just good communication, letting women know what this event is about, what the passion and what the vision and what the excitement behind it is. And then they take off and run. And man, the work is done on your part. You just get to watch and see what happens.
That's so good. That's so good. Mary Margaret, do you have anything you want to share? Just anything about with the whole getting women to an event? I don't want to leave anybody out.
Yeah, I think it is, and I've done that same thing of just going, and I look at my women's ministry team before we have an event and just say, have you called? Have you texted? Who have you reached out to? And I think sometimes we want to go, well, if I put it on social media, they'll all come. Like, and if our church will put it in the pre-roll on Sunday morning, they'll all come. If it gets in a bulletin or we get an announcement, they will all come. But really, I think when we get down to the quiet of our soul, in some moments we all want to be wanted and we want to be asked personally. And so there's something about that personal invitation that makes a huge difference for a lot of women. And I think that oftentimes still is our most effective way to get women to show up for an event, to attend. And it's also a great way to look at women who may not be serving in a current leadership capacity and call them out, raise them up, and just to say, hey, will you come alongside and help me with this? Will you, serve in this way? Will you be a table host if we have tables? And it's, will you, do the door prizes and make it fun. You find creative ways to involve your women. And once they feel like they have some buy-in, they'll tell their friends that they're a part of it. And then they'll, say, you want to be there. Like, you don't want to miss out. But if you are just doing it in a silo, that's where, and just depending on your church's social media, any social media that you have, you may not be getting the results that you're looking for.
That's good. That's really good. I know it's somewhere along the way when we were talking about meaningful events, and we talked about, sometimes it is a speaker coming, sometimes it's a one night gathering, sometimes it's a weekend. You might have a panel. There's so many different types of events that you can plan. So again, I want y'all to jump in on the chat, okay? And what is the type of event that you are wanting to plan, that you see the need for in your women's ministry right now? Is it you could just put don't know. I've never planned an event before. I have no idea what we need. You could put, is it a retreat? Is it somewhere where you're going to actually get away and have a retreat? Is it a one day or a one evening? Or is it more of a destination? We're going to really get away to like a hotel or something like that. Or is it you need to do an event that is actually a simulcast event that your group does gather, but they're part of viewing some kind of simulcast that's being sent out. So I would love to see some of the things, all day Saturday. This is great. An afternoon event. Yeah. A destination retreat. Yeah. These are good. This just, all of these are such, oh, that's an encouraging night for women with serious medical needs. That's a really, that's so good. But thinking about, and that's where sometimes you may not be planning an event for a whole group of women. It may be for the moms, or it may be for the single women, or it might be for a group of women that do have some kind of health concerns or health needs. And so you maybe make those events a little bit more tailored to those groups. But I love seeing your answers in here. This is so, so good. Monthly sourdough night. Okay, there we go. That sounds fun. That's so good. That's so good. So lots of nuts and bolts, no matter whether you're planning a retreat, that you're going to go somewhere or a destination of some kind, or you're going to do it, it's in my church. It's a brunch on Saturday morning. Still, all of those have a lot of nuts and bolts that go with them. Everything from budgets to the planning, the prayer coverage that goes into that, enlisting if you're going to have speakers or teachers or breakout leaders, or if you're going to, you've got to have volunteers to do all the different things that go with it. If you're going to have childcare or not, or all those different things. So we need to be good stewards. We know that of any kind of event we have. So how do you help pay for an event? How do you decide what to charge, what not to charge? How do you make it free or make it, what are some ways that you do make an event cost effective? And I'd love for all of you to chime in as you feel led to, on this one. So, Anne, you want to start?
Sure, I can, because when I first started at my job, we had zero women's ministry budget. And so it was, we had a little bit of money to pay childcare, which I know we can get into that. I think everyone on here, when you hear women's ministry and you hear childcare, it doesn't matter if you're in a huge church or a tiny church, childcare will always be attention in women's ministry, because we want our women who take care of our children to come and be a part of women's ministry, but we also want our children to be taken care of. So I'll punt that to somebody else on the panel because I don't have any great answers. I just have lots of pain and suffering. Um, but as far as really doing with very little, I would first just encourage you, and this is something, and this is not just an easy church answer, ask the Lord. He has an incredible economy.
Mhm.
It is his heart for women to gather, to grow in his word. I have always been so amazed at what God would do with very little. Whether he would allow a speaker to come that didn't cost a lot of money, whether he would allow people to give, whether it was financially or donate different things. I mean, it is always amazing how God opens up the doors. And then as a leader, you get to sit back and just look at his goodness. At the same time, I think it's always good to communicate a need. So you know the people that in your church that you would want to communicate a financial need to. Have those conversations early, not something you'd spring on them right away, but just to be able to show them this is the financial need I have for an event, but let me show you the fruit of what is going to happen. And I think sometimes there's just blind spots that happen. People go, "Oh, it's women, they can get together and do XYZ." But let's tie this back to being a meaningful event, something that we really want to be gospel focused and discipleship driven. And in those cases, I think our pastoral staff really can get involved and on board with the fruit of what can happen there. So a lot of it has to do with good communication with your staff, whether you're on staff or not, letting them know kind of what the purpose of this event is. And then ask the Lord, whose economy is great, to just put his hand on this event. And I know from personal experience, it's the loaves and the fish, girls. I mean, he does incredible things with what you give him.
That's so good. So good.
He really, and I was going to jump in with that too, Anne, of just going of trusting the Lord with those financial pieces, just like we would be encouraged to in our own personal finances, just to say, Lord, what do you want us to do? And will you show us how to accomplish that? Show us how to make it happen. And something that has helped me on a pretty regular basis, and I don't do this for every single event that I've done, but even if you have some small cost related to the event, whether it's $5 or $10, there's a sense of accountability for a woman once she commits financially, even if it's just a little bit, to show up in an event saying, well, I did pay for that. I already bought a ticket. Like it feels like more of a commitment than something that's free. And that also lets you know how to budget well and plan for how many women you can prepare for. So you're not over or under preparing or just going, we literally have no idea how many women are going to show up for this. And so it helps you to be a better steward of the money that you have but it also gives you a little bit of money to use for your event. It gives you a little bit of a pool to say, hey, this is some money we can put towards the food or snacks or towards having somebody speak or teach that night. And so it makes a big difference. And so that's something that's been very helpful to me.
That's good. That's good. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Sherry.
I'll jump into this section as well, because the word that you used at the very beginning was the stewardship. The word stewardship, because we're not just stewarding finances or the money, we're also stewarding the time of the people and the people who are coming, the people who are involved. And so just having that mindset from the get-go that we are stewarding what God has given us. So it goes back to that question, what does he want to do? Well, whatever he wants to do, he will be in the midst of, and he will provide the plan. He will provide what you need to carry that out. And just kind of, I've been looking a little bit in the chat, and we see this too in the women that we talk with, different size churches, different size budgets. Some have a huge budget for women's ministry. Some have zero budget for women's ministry or for events. So you have to think through, how you're going to do that. And I don't like to use the word trend, because trend in minutes, I don't know, but it is kind of a trend we're seeing, and this goes back to also knowing your women, like women, bringing in a big speaker that's going to cost a lot of money. Yes, some churches can do that, but you have women right where you are, right in your midst. And the event that's coming up at my church in a couple of weeks, that I was meeting with my young friend about how to plan this event, like how do you want to plan your time because you want to have that meaningful time, allow, 30 minutes for eating, 30 minutes for, interaction. And then we've got a panel of these women who have been friends for decades in our church, and they're going to share some life truths and just spiritual moments as well. But think about who you have right where you are in your church setting, or someone local that can come, and building in that time. Another point is too, I was thinking of is, have we ever gone to like this great event at another church and we're like, the tables were all decorated, they had this fantastic giveaways, and we're like, oh, I wanted, I wish I could do that in my church. And maybe that's not possible. We need to remember that remembering goes back to remembering the church that you serve, the women who are there, maybe bringing a few of those elements and then asking the Lord to show you some creative ways. You've got men in your church who might build you a backdrop, or someone who's creative who can create a really fun photo booth area. So just making those elements, bringing those in and using those creative ways to add to your event.
That's great. Sherry, you brought up two different things. And Catherine, if I think we've got it, we have a timeline for an event that we had in a blog post. I don't remember when exactly, but if we could put that in the chat, realizing that all of this, little or small, that it all takes time, whatever it is. So it might be an extra few hours here or extra couple of days or weeks, but the more, either the farther you go or wherever you might go or what you're doing and how many extra elements that are part of this meaningful event will take more time. So we have a great little what we call a checklist, like a 1-year checklist. But one of the things that I think a lot of people ask, and I think it's important whether you are having a meaningful event at your church or attending one somewhere, is how do you vet and enlist speakers when it's someone outside your church? Because you made a great point, Sherry, of using people in your church that know the vision of your church and align theologically. But how do you go about vetting, vetting, if you're going to have a speaker come in, and you're not going to get Priscilla Shire, you're not going to necessarily know, it might not be somebody who's as well known, I guess that's what I should say. So how do you vet them and know that they're going to be in line with your church? I'm gonna let somebody answer it. Yeah.
I'll jump in.
Yep.
Mary, were you jumping in?
Oh no, I was just seeing. I was waiting to see who else would.
Yeah, because it does come up, and I think definitely check with churches that have used the person to see what kind of experience they had, or if there was anything that they could help you as you're making that determination. Check with your state convention. Your state convention is usually a good resource for reliable and theologically aligned, solid speakers, because you can run into something that it maybe seems okay, like she seems okay, but then you get to the event or you hear from someone who was at an event that the person spoke at, and that's not correct English, sorry, at which the person spoke. And so, and there might have been something that was just a little bit off about, a truth that was shared or something. And so just, I would say definitely talk to some of the churches that have used this person, check with your state convention. Those are two resources that I would mention.
If they are someone that has their own website, blog, look for those statement of faith, their theological guidelines. Don't be afraid to have the conversations with them, to ask maybe some hard questions. If your church aligns this way, but you're not seeing, or you're seeing a little bit more one way or another, maybe with them, even from what they write up in their on their blog or their website or whatever, I would say it's a really important thing to do. Um, so shifting gears, how do you enlist volunteers? How do you equip them uh, to serve new people in an event, especially if you have people that, you're encouraging them to invite their friends. You're saying, please bring a friend to this. Maybe, hopefully those that are unchurched or don't know the Lord at all. How do you really enlist those volunteers that you know are going to represent your church well and represent your women's ministry well and Christ, you know?
I think there are a couple ways you can go about it. There is that the wisdom in knowing women who are going to represent you and your church well, and putting people in the right spots. Not everybody is a great greeter, and that's okay. But like, you need to find the right women who are going to be those friendly faces at the door, or if you're doing an event where you're having time for women to have conversation, make sure it's some women who are very wise who can help lead that conversation. And I think it's a combination of both handpicking some women to say, "Hey, would you serve in this capacity?" And also, like, if you've got some roles that any woman truly could serve in, include it in an email about the event, and just say, "Hey, if you're interested in serving with decorations, with setup, with greeting at the door, please shoot us an email and let us know how you'd like to serve." And I think throwing it out there are some women who will respond to that and will say, I could do that. I could do something. And but then too, and they may be some women that you would not have thought to ask. But then I think it's also important for you to handpick some women to be in key roles as well, and just ask them to see your women the way that Jesus sees them, and ask them to have their hearts and their minds turned towards the women who are showing up, who may be there for the first time, or maybe coming from a place of hurt, or things that we don't even know about. Something that happened that day, and just be intentional with letting them see that if they're serving, they are being the hands and feet of Jesus. And so we've got to give them every opportunity to serve effectively that way, and to truly minister alongside. And I think that when we empower our women to be more than just somebody holding a door, somebody sitting at a table, they feel equipped to be able to do the ministry of Jesus in a way that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. And so don't be afraid to give away some of those pieces of ministry when you can, and ask them to truly jump in with you and say, "Hey, like, you are representing us today and you're representing Christ today." And so make sure that is involved in every conversation you have, and to also not just go to your normal people, your normal friends, but if you're serving, like, you are on, and we need you to have your eyes open to some women who are trying to find a seat. And don't be the women who like put things on a whole row of chairs, or like turn chairs up at a table, and make women feel like they're not included. So you've got to, as you enlist those volunteers, you've then got to train and equip them, even if it's just a quick meeting before the event starts. But those pieces are key.
That's so good. I'm going
I
to
was,
kind of push us on through here.
oh, you're
Okay. Just with meaningful events, and I think you brought up some great points, but I think for all of us, if we want to plan a meaningful event, we need to think back to what our favorite event was, what we went to. Why was it our favorite? Was, what was involved with the publicity? How did you find out about it? What was involved with the people, the program? What were the things that set it apart for you? Um, and thinking back, was it just publicized so well, or was it a personal invitation? Um, and so just thinking through that, and I wanted to get to you because you are on the event team, and you really help a lot with the simulcast, and as well as working the live events and things. Um, a lot of people don't know about hosting simulcast. When you're struggling with, like, I don't know who to get as a speaker, and a lot of speakers, their calendars are just packed out for years in advance, and they're trying to put their families first and their church first, and how they serve in their own home and community. And so simulcast is probably one of the best ways to get some of those. Like, I know we just had I guess Priscilla's simulcast, or and so just thinking about that, tell us a little bit about how you would host a simulcast maybe, or how that plays into a meaningful event.
Sure. So before I came on working with Lifeway, I hosted simulcasts in my church because they were so cost effective. I knew the speaker, I knew what she stood for, I knew the product from Lifeway was going to be quality, and it is actually so easy. I am so technically unsavvy, and I'm telling you, if I can host a simulcast in my church, you can too. Um, we would have simulcasts that were large. We would have them in small groups. I think there is so much flexibility with a simulcast. You don't have to do it on a live day. You have different days that you can do it. You have different availability. What I'm so excited about is that we have a Christmas simulcast. This is the second year we're doing it, called Prepare Him Room. And it is only 2 hours. So some simulcasts are full day events. This one is 2 hours, which is really manageable, and it's available the entire month of December. Jennifer Rothschild is going to be leading it, and she's got a great worship guy with her coming in. And so you've got worship, you're going to have great teaching. And what Prepare Him Room is about is just really about setting aside a time to really reflect on what Christmas is all about. I think we can all attest to how crazy that season is. And in fact, I think I'm constantly seeing memes about the countdown of how many days we have, or how many shopping days, or how many weekends. I'm like, oh my goodness. But why do we celebrate Christmas? And so if you've never done a simulcast event, maybe this would be a great one to jump off on. You have the availability, like I said, for the whole month of December. And so I would love to, I don't know if you can put my email or a way to contact me, but I would love to get to talk to you guys about how to do that effectively. We have simulcast specialists that are serve all over the United States that help you literally line by line go through the event. You can call us, text us, all of that. We want to make it as easy as possible for you.
That's good. I'm switching us to the Q&A section, and somebody actually, I think Catherine, you're going to answer her about, yes, the simulcast, they're releasing all the 2025 events. So you should be able to find that on lifeway.com. Somebody made the comment, Prepare Him Room. You just basically can show up, and just even, maybe your question is, my church, we did it last year. We only had about 35 to 40 women there, which for us was great, because with the busyness of Christmas, and we did it on a Sunday evening, we did have the worship portion play. But actually there were different people that were coming in from this or that, but everybody was there for the teaching. We had some cookies and we had water. We did not have, there was no extra of anything. And so I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do Prepare Him Room in particular, but that was one of the questions in here. One of the things here says your elders have asked that you focus on one-on-one discipleship. Do we have any advice on events that bring the goal of one-on-one discipleship into it to happen? Do y'all have any ideas? Maybe some other women have done something with one-on-one discipleship. Just thinking off the top of our heads.
So
Go
what
ahead.
we have used large events to be a catalyst for one-on-one discipleship, because we put women around a table. It's one of the things that I love most about women's ministry is the multi-generational part of women's ministry. And we sit people around a table. Girls, we sit them in assigned seats, and everybody loses their mind, and it's going to be okay, because suddenly they're around people who they did not know before they came to this event, and they walk away and go, wait a minute, we had all these connections. This is incredible. But I think that can lay fertile ground for that discipleship. You're not going to sit at a table and love every single person you sit next to, but you may sit at a table and have a connection with one girl that you wouldn't have done before. And so I think that helps lay that fertile ground to then encourage. And I think a lot of it has to do with that leadership. What are you saying? Are you encouraging your women to look around? Who is the Lord giving you natural connections with? Foster that. Go to a coffee. It doesn't mean you have a, year-long commitment. It's one coffee, or it's one, dessert, whatever you like, or one walk around the park. Just ask the Lord what he wants to do with that. I think sometimes we get so afraid that discipleship looks one certain way, and it's a, study we meet every week for 365 days of the year. I think the Lord, and we look at Jesus' example, right? It's very different. It's life on life. It's just normal connections. Ask him to show you those out of those events.
I was thinking of a couple of resources because I also get this question pretty often from women's ministry leaders, because we are seeing more churches come around intentional discipling. And so I love the Flourish resource from Passion City Church that's also through Lifeway. Also Foundations. I've got a couple of ministry leaders in my state that are using the Disciple Her by Candy Gallaty method and approach. And what you can do is you can launch, you can have an event to launch this concept. You're a discipling, one-on-one concept, however, whatever that looks like in your church's context. I have another church in my state who's just been exploded with their D groups. And so they've had a launch event, but then they also have like a celebration event. Like you can create this goes back to not having event driven ministry, but like, what is God doing? Let's celebrate that, because that's what he does throughout the scripture. Like God wants us to celebrate what he's doing. So those resources are great at utilizing. And then Women in the Word, like Jen Wilkins, I've used that in my mom's group in past years. You just ask the Lord to show you how to creatively utilize that and then celebrate what God does and then multiply. When we talk about what God's doing, he's going to glorify himself through that and then multiply the work. And the one other point that I wanted to make sure we didn't mention is never assume that all of your women know Jesus. We want to make sure that we're always pointing them to Jesus and how to know him more.
That's so good, Sherry. Mary Margaret, you got anything you did a whole teen study on Show Her the Way. Any one-on-one discipleship tips in there?
I think it is just like one of y'all said, like sometimes we overcomplicate it. We feel like it has to be programmatic. For me personally, organic mentoring and discipleship has been what's been most effective for me and for me to do. But just to be open and willing and ask the Lord, who are you drawing into my life? Like, who are you calling me to do this with, to invite into my home? And, now that I'm a mom with little kids at home, it is, my time looks different than it used to. And like, my husband works at a school, and I took the boys up to see him last Friday before the football game. And one of the cheerleaders said, "Are you staying for the game?" I said, "My boys go to bed at 7, so no." And, but just to go, where can you show up? Where do you have time? Where do you have windows that you can say, "Hey, I'm available"? And so like when people ask to spend time with me, I'm like, "You want to come to my house?" Like if you want to come around 1:00, that's when the boys sleep. And so like I try to go, just fit it in and make it work and make myself available. And I try not to look too busy, like I don't have time, because a lot of people would look at me sometimes and say, "Oh, she's got too much going on." And I really do have time and I want to make time. But don't be afraid to ask. And so I think sometimes we just hesitate and go, "I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything at all." But just if you feel called to disciple or to be discipled, ask the other person.
Okay, great. Good. There was another question. Any ideas on ministering to widows? She said, "I'm not a widow, but I want to minister to them." I think that I would say, whether it's a widow or a single mom or a single adult woman, even college students, how can we draw them in to, whether it's the events or into that one-on-one discipleship even? Good, Jerry.
I have a couple of friends, and one of our trainers, I know Adriana has a heart for ministering to widows, and she's doing some ministry like that in Missouri, where she serves, also in Alabama. Can't remember which state she was doing that in, but we've also started doing widows banquets. We call them banquets. That's like a churchy term, but just celebrating them or just remembering them, and also involving our students to serve them, to see what they might need, and assigning. We do this as a deacon ministry in my church, but you could also do it as part of your women's ministry, kind of pairing some women up with some of the widows. I think there's a lot of creative ways that you can do that. But I think that's a very important thing, not to overlook them.
Good. That's good. Whatever you're planning, we always want to know what's the point, what's the purpose, what Mary Margaret, I think you're the one that said, what is the why of this event? What is the purpose of this event? And so getting back to why are we doing this? That's always going to drive everything you do in your planning and in the ministry that you're taking part in. Y'all, it's already time to wrap it up for the day. This has been so fun to be with you. Our next webinar and the final one of the year is November 14th on friendships in ministry. We're so grateful that you could join us today, and we just are praying that the Lord continues to open those doors for you to have meaningful events that draw women in who don't know Him, that encourage women that are in your church and in your community, and that they all will know Jesus more and follow Him more faithfully every day. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Okay. Have a great day. Bye.